you can.
Boy, so I go first, huh? Hi, everyone. My name is Yasser Hernandez. I work at Zocdoc. I'm an engineering manager there. I've been with Zocdoc for 5.5 years now.
Thank you. And how, talk a little bit about Zocdoc before we go to the next panelist and how you're solving issues in the space.
Yeah, so Zocdoc is a marketplace for patients to be able to find the right doctor that cares for their needs, whether that is through a virtual appointment or an in-person appointment. As you switch through different healthcares, you have different needs. It's good to have a good marketplace that you can trust to find the right care for you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Yasser. And then I'll go next to Steven Jimenez, who is in Cartagena.
I wish. Hey, everyone. My name is Steven Jimenez. I currently work at Nomad as the tech lead for the workflow management team. And what Nomad does is we provide a solution for what is known as a very people-powered industry for nurses to find jobs. So travel nurses currently look for jobs via agencies or through other platforms as well. Nomad Health is providing kind of like a seamless platform to be able to transparently look up a job of their interest and up to any specialty and be able to apply. And we would then kind of automate that process and make finding their next job a little easier.
Wonderful. And people may say, well, you know, how does that solve anything? But we understand that there's a nursing shortage in this country. And the research shows and the data shows that as we go into the future, nurses are getting older, they're retiring at higher rates, and finding this resource is so essential to maintaining healthcare delivery. So thank you for that. All right, next up we have Henry from Capsule.
Nice. Yeah, so speaking of delivery, so yeah, my name is Henry Quintana. I'm an expansion operations manager at Capsule. So my job, we're a New York City based company. So my job was and continues to be, let's get us everywhere that's not New York City. So we've been scaling across the country for the past 2 years. And yeah, what Capsule does is, yeah, we're on a mission to build a pharmacy that works for everybody. So you know, the pharmacy is really what is the entity in healthcare that patients will actually interact with the most. So more than your doctor, more than your insured, it's the pharmacy. So really trying to 10x the experience there, make it delightful, which you usually don't associate with your healthcare experience. We do offer free 2-hour delivery. So yeah, just really trying to make healthcare just a far better, it's super easy to call an Uber. So just making it very easy to manage, adhere to your medications. Yeah, that's really what we're out to do.
Thanks, Henry. And just to kind of expand a little bit on that, I mean, 2 hours, really, we've all gone to the pharmacy and have had like not such great experiences, correct? So it's really like disrupting that, right? Making it easier for the end user and getting you your medications, which sometimes can be, very serious in terms of safety. So
yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I usually think about it as, yes, the delivery is kind of the cherry on top. There's a lot of things that we also help handle for our patients that usually folks don't think about until you're like, you're sick and you're really just kind of struggling to find a solution. So if you go to the pharmacy and they ran out of your medication, or if your insurance isn't taking this medication, if you need to call your doctor so they can send over a generic. So all those things that kind of involve the patient, we actually handle a lot of those things on the back end, so that really all users have to worry about is scheduling a 2-hour window that works with their schedule, and then we'll handle the rest.
Amazing, thank you. And we'll hear more, and definitely during the breakouts, we'll be able to chat more individually with each of the panelists and the recruiters too. Great. So next we have Roxanne Diaz from Flatiron Health. Hi.
Hola, Tati. So yeah, my name is Roxanne Diaz. I Born and raised in Peru, by the way. Shout out to all the Peruvians in the Zoom. I'm a product manager at Flatiron, just like Tati said. I just actually started in January, so I've been there for like less than 6 months. Previous to that, I've been a product manager in the biotech space, and at Flatiron, what I do is manage one of our data products per se. Flatiron is in the cancer industry. What we do is basically we're trying to learn from the experience of and the journey of every single cancer patient to help, along with like partnering with pharma to help improve like cancer drugs and cancer therapies. We do that in like multiple ways. We have multiple products in that sense, but I'd say like that's the gist of it.
Wonderful, thank you. And what's interesting is that there is just so much data in the oncology space, right? There's data from clinical trials and data from the different interventions, and we're trying to move towards personalized medicine. And in terms of chemotherapeutics, drugs, you know, this space is really hard. As you know, I've had family members that have had different types of cancers, so it is very difficult. And so, you know, it's really great to see disruption there.
It's definitely, the mission is very aligned with me because just like you said, I feel like we can all relate to that. And cancer is one of the leading causes of death in the Latinx population. So it definitely hits close to home and feel very aligned and passionate about the mission.
Thank you so much. And during the introductions, I forgot to mention one thing with Yasser and Zocdoc. I am a Zocdoc user. Full disclosure there. You know, why call when you could just do it online and you can like see what appointments are available. It's just opens up access. So forgot to add that there. Excellent. So thank you all for the introductions. And now that the audience has gotten to know you a little better, maybe we should go ahead and talk about your journey, right? Everybody has a career trajectory. How did you get into your role today? And what motivated for you to get into healthcare? You kind of talked a little bit about it, but we want to really understand the backstory. So maybe we'll start with Stephen this time.
Hey, so before Nomad, I was seeking kind of the opportunity to have an impact on people specifically. And other colleagues of mine were also in health tech. And so there was this also notion of being a little bit different in terms of culture. So in addition to that, at the time before Nomad, I was at a agency where I was just working on different projects. And upon kind of like transitioning into another role, I learned about Nomad, and they had a kind of a small size engineering team. So I saw a lot of opportunities for growth. On top of that, there was a good culture around diversity, which was really interesting. Because like my first manager was a Black manager, something that you don't see as often is Black and Latinx in leadership positions. And so that's what attracted me to Nomad. And then as I started off as a software engineer, so I wanted to kind of grow into that technical role. And Nomad, with all its growth, I was able to kind of like advocate for myself and be able to get to that tech position. So that's kind of like what attracted me to Nomad, is not only just impacting how nurses find their next role, but also the growth and the potential that Nomad Health provided.
Wonderful, thank you. So for you, it was a combination of, you know, using your technical prowess and the diversity angle.
Yep.
Excellent. So Henry, what about you? How did you get into this role and what motivated you?
Yeah, I've spent my entire career so far really just scaling startups that are tackling just kind of big, hairy problems in different fields. So I've kind of jumped around quite a bit. So I started off, I was doing transportation, and then I was doing, housing and real estate, which again, people need a place to live, they need to get around. And then I found Capsule, and Yeah, it was just, things are so fundamentally broken in the healthcare system, and that kind of excites me, right? That gives, that tells me that there's just a huge opportunity to make magic in this space. And yeah, I'm really happy to be working in this field and trying to make a difference. And on the personal front, I'm also just a very, I'm all into exercise and like living a healthy lifestyle, and I preach that, and all my friends know that. So yeah, health is something that, again, just really hits home for me, and something that I love working and just kind of pushing forward and advancing.
Amazing. So for you, it sounds like the challenge of applying your expertise in another industry,
Right.
but also marrying it with your own personal interests in health and wellness.
Yeah. So I didn't know a thing about real estate when I joined HomeSure. I didn't know a thing about pharmacy when I joined Capsule, but yeah, just kind of learning on the go, and just really, again, just as long as I need to be able to like dive 110% to the mission. I've been able to do that in all my roles. So I think everything else kind of came not easier, but just kind of naturally, just getting up to speed and then taking it from there.
And that's great for a lot of the audience to hear, right? Because some people may be wanting to switch roles. They're already in tech. They can be, developers, engineers, designers, data scientists, or maybe not in a technical role, but wanting to get into, use their management skills or whatever into health tech. So it's good to see all of these perspectives.
Yeah.
And next, yeah, Roxanne, you talked a little bit earlier about, your motivations, but how did you get there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I was a biology major in college, and I was very ambitious. I was like, I was like a recent immigrant. I really like biology, like wanted to understand like human disease. I was also really into genetics. I was like, let me go get an MD PhD and enroll in like a 15-year program, and just like know
20 years.
The rest of my life is gonna look like. But then as soon as I graduated college, I was just like, wait a minute, I'm not sure actually like I'm into this, but I was really into like, wanted to do something around like healthcare. And I was going to school in Silicon Valley, and I discovered this thing called like tech and biotech. And I discovered that there was a career path, and there was also real talk money there, that, going into medical school, going into PhDs, like that is an investment. And so I figured that biotech was like my way to still like be in the healthcare space, and without like, I wouldn't say like without, but like be in the healthcare space, and like without like needing to be like an MD or a PhD. I think like there's a lot of people like who are like both, or have either one, or in the healthcare space, which I think is great. But I think it's like biotech or like health tech is like what fitted also my personality, because doctors is very like one-on-one interaction. PhDs, you're in a lab doing research, like really honing in or like zoning in into like one very specific question. And for me, I kind of wanted to be like at the cutting edge of like technology. I wanted to be like working on solutions that were going to help like a lot of people. I was like more big picture type of person, have a lot of personality. And so I kind of wanted to be more like out there, and like biotech, health tech ended up being like that for me. And I started working as a research associate role. I had a research associate role in a small biotech startup. I was like the 10th person there. And what the research associate, like what that meant was like doing everything but coding, really. So like support, sales, marketing, anything that was needed. And that's kind of like how I got in. And then I found my way into like, I really like this thing that I've been doing, which is product, but I didn't really know that it existed. So yeah, it was like a lot of, I think I chose like a little bit more challenging path for me, because at one point I was like, I don't feel like I want to know what the next like 15 years of my life are gonna like look like. I want to be more adventurous. So like I choose like the challenging route, and it was hard to figure out, to be honest, but I'm happy I'm here.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's interesting to hear your career trajectory, right? Some people's are more linear, some people it's like a zigzag. And I hear you on the 15, 20-year plan, when you want to be pre-med and then you're like, but I'm 18 years old and I don't see myself spending like, 15 years. So yeah, thanks for sharing that, especially for the audience. And next, Yasser, yeah, tell us a little bit about your career trajectory and your motivations. You kind of spoke a little bit about it too.
Yeah, so for a little bit more background, my dad is a doctor, and I always saw him provide care to patients and just the rewarding feeling of helping someone out. But I had no interest in being a doctor whatsoever. But I was more interested in computer science and programming. And one day I was reading TechCrunch and I read an article about Zocdoc, and it kind of clicked in the head. I'm like, oh, there's a healthcare industry that's growing and it's starting to form, and I can kind of combine my skills and help people through it. And I joined Zocdoc as a software engineer, and I started growing my career, really enjoyed mentoring more junior folks. And I decided to go the management route because I just really enjoyed helping people through healthcare and as a manager.
Thank you. And that's exciting to hear. You see, everybody has like a different bent, and every company is also solving a particular issue, which is a really nice segue into the next question. Um, and we'll start with Henry now. What kinds of technology are your companies using that haven't traditionally been applied in healthcare?
Yeah, I think I mentioned that. Yeah, there's a delivery aspect to it, but I think what we really focus on the experience. So I think that's a very tech Silicon Valley thing to do. So essentially, we think about pharmacy and kind of healthcare as if there were only one pharmacist in the world, and that pharmacist was your mom, how would she handle your prescriptions for you? So that's really how we think about it. We also understand that it's not just about the patient. So we're building a pharmacy that works for everybody, and everybody isn't only the patients. So there's doctors, there's insurers. So we're really leveraging our technology to make it easier for doctors to work with us, to make it easier for insurers to work with us. So basically that we're all communicating. We're basically kind of playing quarterback to the entire healthcare system, which is something that I think historically hasn't been done. I think things have been very siloed and nobody really talks to each other. The example I like to give is, most of the times when doctors send out prescriptions, they don't have a good way to actually know whether the prescription goes out the door, and it's hard for them to know if you actually picked it up, if you actually took it. So I liken it, it's like if I order a pair of, Nikes and I ask Nike, hey, where are my shoes? And they're like, I don't know. So it's really, just making sure that all the players who need to communicate with each other are communicating with each other kind of in one place. And while we are a pharmacy, we're sort of becoming a platform. And again, playing that quarterback role of, all these different pieces in healthcare playing together in order to deliver better health outcomes and a better experience for patients.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And we're going to accelerate the questions a little bit because I know we wanted to hear a little bit more about everybody's background, but since we have limited time, we'll do like a couple of people per question. So I guess I'll ask you the same question, Yasser. What kind of technologies is Zocdoc applying to healthcare that haven't been before?
Yeah, so healthcare moves really slow. So we try to pick technologies that are working in the industry and kind of reimagine how can we apply it to solve patients' need to access the healthcare that's right for them. So one of the best examples that I always think about is trying to understand your insurance card. Insurance cards are extremely different from plan. Nobody knows what a member ID is or a group ID is. So at Zocdoc, we use machine learning to be able to just take a simple photo using your phone of your insurance card, and we'll figure it out all for you. And we'll send it to the provider, or you can see it yourself, and makes it a lot easier for you to identify. So that's the type of technology we tend to use to just take a process that's really complicated. So another example is trying to find a doctor for some head issue that you have. You could go to primary care, or maybe you need a neurologist, like maybe you need a specialist, but you don't know who that specialist is. So we try to convert common phrases, common symptoms, and map it to a specialist that you need.
Excellent. Thank you. It's great to know because sometimes people are like, well, you know, I can order a car online, right? I can do this online. I can do this through an app, but it may not necessarily be available, right? To have these services or these technologies in a clinic, in a hospital, in a pharmacy. Um, so the next question is actually two questions in one. So I'm going to ask Stephen this one. You know, have you seen any improvements in the industry overall in terms of quality and standardization of data? That's the first question. Then what are some future trends and are there signs of any promising changes? I mean, we just heard how slow healthcare is.
Yeah, so yeah, I definitely agree with the slow pace of healthcare. But the good thing is that we are kind of like seeing a good number of health startups like coming about trying to solve these problems. Like if you think of other companies like One Medical, Talkspace, and like Una Health, they're all tackling similar problems in terms of like using systems to provide data, not only to their users, but also to other folks like Nomad. So like Nomad uses third-party services that provide health-related data to better assess a nurse, for example, for a specific job, whether that nurse has to take an assessment and be able to assess, well, how much experience does this nurse have in this job? So there are, I think there's definitely positive signs that data is getting more structured. And I think it's only time that we start, the more we work with each other, the more I think data is going to be easier to consume. There are still challenges because like we said, healthcare is slow. So their technologies may be out of date and hard to use, but I think there's a lot of room for growth. And what was the second question? Sorry.
Yeah, the second question is, you know, what future trends do you see and do you see any promise of changes, right? Because healthcare has traditionally been very resistant to change. Like if you worked in a hospital like I did, took forever to implement any new processes or new technologies. So
yeah, so I think there is definitely a lot of trends that I think I wouldn't say that we're also contributing into our like industry of nurse staffing. So if you look at what we're doing in terms of how transparent we are with how much a nurse will get paid and how easy it may be to kind of look for your next job, and then you kind of focus on what the powered people agencies are doing, you kind of start seeing that they're also trying to be transparent, whether that's through like social media or through other like means of just connecting with nurses. So I think slowly but surely you'll start to see more interaction in the industry of staffing with nurses and making it a lot more easier for nurses to find jobs and provide that data to the providers, to the facilities. Yeah, so I think that's what we'll start seeing.
awesome insights. That's great. And Roxanne, same question for you, and I'll I'll say it again. Have you seen improvements in the industry overall in terms of quality or standardization of data? And then what are some future trends and do you think things will change? And it's interesting because data is king at Flatiron, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely I say yes. Flatiron has been definitely at the cutting edge of that. Like part of what we do is, you know, there's a lot of community centers, community oncology centers, like all across the US. And what we do is like aggregate that data. We clean it up, like we curate it, experts like curate and abstract it in a way that is like, that it can inform either like therapies, like new therapies, policies, advanced research. So that's definitely, we've been in a cancer space for sure. Like we have played like a big role there. And as far as market trends, and I think like, you know, we're seeing that with a lot of the other companies that my peers are representing, is that I think a lot of like health tech or like biotech companies, especially during the pandemic, were trying to put like the patient experience at the front and center. How do we make, like, one, like how do we involve the patient more in the process? How do we allow like doctors and nurses and other healthcare practitioners, like let them do their job and enable them with technology to do a better job? And yeah, like I agree with like healthcare is like very slow, and there's a reason for that because there's like patients' lives at stake. But I think like, you know, in the case of Flatiron, like we are at the front end of that, and we are how do you call it, like pushing policy actually in place, like setting the standard in that way to like learn from all this like cancer patient journeys. And you know, it's a terrible disease, and like let's see what we can what we can learn so other family members, other friends do not have to go through the same journey. So I say like, yeah, patients at the front and center. And I think like I feel like I'm starting to also like slowly see more this space of like healthcare, or at least like maybe I want to see it moving into more like proactive than reactive. I think like, you know, medicine is very like you go to the doctor, you get some like treatment, prescription. But I think like, at least like for me, something that I've always wanted to do is like, how do we prevent even like getting that disease? Like, how do we screen? How do we just avoid that whole thing? I feel like I've kind of like worked in different spectrums of like healthcare and biotech and health tech, and like perhaps like I'm at the closest of like, what can we do to just like avoid anybody going through this like cancer journey? So I don't know if it's a trend, but that's like a trend that I'm hoping to push.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think some people in the audience may have that public health population-based care background. And I think that's where you're going towards, right? It's like upstream effects, prevention, right? Immunization, screenings, getting to that disease state early in the game and working to minimize any effects. So that is so important. And of course, time runs quickly when you're having fun and talking about something so interesting. And I see that we only have a couple minutes more before we go into our breakout sessions. And so we'll have to skip a few questions, but this question is very important given that this COVID situation has impacted everyone. You know, usually a disease will impact a particular person or family, right? And sometimes if it's environmental, it will impact a zip code or a region. But with COVID, it's been global and everyone has been affected. So given that we only have a few minutes, but I feel like I'm very excited because I know all of you are working so diligently here. And I think the audience really does need to hear how your company is positioning itself to provide solutions for this post-pandemic phase. So maybe we'll do like quick 1 minute for everybody. How does that sound? So we'll start with Yasser. How is Zocdoc positioning itself for post-COVID?
Yeah, so the COVID was an interesting phenomenon because it definitely accelerated the healthcare space. Previous to COVID, a lot of practices and providers are very hesitant to move to telehealth and being able to offer an online service. So the pandemic kind of forced everybody to do that, right? And Zocdoc quickly pivoted and we created a telehealth service that was HIPAA compliant for all of our providers to use for free. And by May 2020, 30 to 40% of our bookings were now telehealth service. So we think that COVID kind of forced everybody to move quick, and that's going to be a trend ongoing. Well, telehealth is now here to stay, and people will use it and have more options on how to access healthcare.
Awesome, thank you. We'll go with Henry then. How is Capsule positioning itself post-COVID?
Yeah, so COVID also provided Capsule with a pretty big an opportunity to step up in a pretty big way as folks, they wanted to stay safe at home. They increasingly opted for delivery options for groceries, for everything, right? So, also to Yasser's point with, telehealth use on the rise as well, I think it also makes perfect sense for patients to select Capsule as their preferred pharmacy after their visit, because if a patient doesn't want or need to go into the provider's office to receive their care, it's also very likely that they don't want to go into the pharmacy in person to pick up the prescriptions either. So Capsule can deliver the medications to their doors in 2 hours after their telehealth visit is complete. And yeah, I think that's one thing that we've really I think is going to be very useful. It was useful during the pandemic. I think it's going to continue to the use, delivery for prescriptions is only going to increase as well. And then, kind of the impact that we're having on a larger scale, I think, just Capsule customers tend to adhere to their medications at 50% higher rates than average, because we make it so much easier for people to manage, know exactly, if they need a refill, we take care of that as well. So if people are, staying on their medications, that means they're staying healthy. So if they're healthy, they're staying out of hospitals, which then, puts less of a strain on doctors and hospitals, which then even like for insurance, that means like the insurance has to pay out less. So while, historically, a lot of these players have been resistant to change, I think we're seeing, opportunities for incentives and, people actually wanting to come to the table and potentially partner with, these types of tech companies and make these changes that, result in better health outcomes for patients and just for every player overall, instead of just, again, staying in their silos and just doing things that they've done for 20, 30, 50, 100 years.
You've captured like 10 different issues in healthcare that we're going to work to solve. So Roxanne, 1 minute, how's Flatiron going to position itself?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember that 1 minute. So like I said, what we try to do, what we do at Flatiron is like capture the patient journey. And so that means like all of those like oncology visits, like doctor visits, appointments, kind of like results, all of that, we try to capture that. So televisits kind of like became a thing during the pandemic, as like my peers have said, and so we started capturing like that sort of data. And I think that's all I'd say. That's what means my 1 minute.
I know it's hard, right?
Yeah.
And Stephen, we'll let you talk a little bit about how Nomad Health is, positioning itself. Hopefully, we'll have nurses teleporting themselves to your home, right? Is that the next thing?
That is definitely the next feature, sending nurse via teleportation. So during the pandemic, we saw a huge spike in nurses submitting applications. And so with everything kind of coming back to normal with vaccines, we're looking to expand the number of partners that we source jobs from. That way we can now not just provide travel nurses, but also other professionals can come to our platform to search for jobs. Yeah.
Thank you. And unfortunately, that concludes this first session of the panel. Let's get everybody an amazing round of applause. I see the chat is on fire with people connecting, and that's also another reason why we did this. And Andrea and Chloe are gonna work together. We're gonna go to the next session, which is the breakouts.
Yeah, so thank you, Tatiana, and thank you all the panelists for all your insight. We have 4 different breakout rooms with all the panelists and the recruiters. You guys can choose your own breakout rooms. So I'm gonna open them and you guys can go, and we'll regroup at 7 p.m. again.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Thank you, panelists. Have fun, everybody, and engage, connect, ask questions.